You're listening to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. Before we get started, if you haven't yet, make sure you leave us some feedback on wherever you get your podcast from. It really does help us out a lot. This is episode 80, where we have a very special guest, Idaho State Representative Chad Christensen. We talk about his strong support for the Second Amendment, what we as citizens can do to make our voices heard, and a whole lot of other things. As always, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy episode 80 of Range Minded, the interview with State Representative Chad Christensen. Hello and welcome to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. My name is Mark Long, and I am joined not only by
Steve Zimmerman, but we have somebody else here.
We sure do.
Who do we have?
Representative Chad Christensen.
An Idaho State Representative, or the Idaho State Representative, Chad Christensen. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate your time, sir.
You bet.
Yeah, so it was a little chaotic trying to get going. We had some glitches, so we're kind of, I'm flustered. I don't know about everybody else, but
I'm good.
I think we're both cool as a cucumber. Chad and I are great.
Yeah, see, so I'm just over exaggerating my life. Is that what it is?
Maybe a little, but that's okay. You know what? You're the passionate one of the two of us. So.
Oh, I guess. Passionate about some things, I guess.
So, but Chad is a big Second Amendment supporter, and so naturally we had to have him on the podcast. He's also a state legislator, which is a great thing. So, thank you for spending some time with us. Like I said earlier, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
All right. So, Chad, how did you? What made you want to get involved in politics? Like, why?
Well, it was actually a Second Amendment issue. Why I decided? Well, first of all, I ran for sheriff in 2012. It was a constitutional candidate in Idaho County. Because I was worried about the federal intrusions in our state and county, and so I decided to run that platform. This recent go around, I was frustrated with Tom Murcher's blocking bills in the State Affairs Committee. That included constitutional carry, several instances where he blocked constitutional carry, and also the Stand Your Ground bill the House put forward. He blocked that bill. So I finally, I told Greg Pruitt of the Second Amendment Alliance that I might run against this guy because we're in the same district, and he thought, okay, and we talked about it and stuff, and then he called back and said, hey, there's somebody going to run in Bear Lake against Tom Murcher, and so I said, okay, let him go. He's probably more known than I am in the district. He backed out in February of 2018. So Greg called back, hey Chad, will you run? and I had other people in the district talk to me too. Here in Idaho County, Brian Smith and some others that kind of talked to me about it, and I decided I should do it because who else will? If I don't step up, then probably nobody will.
Sure.
And it was time for him to go. He'd been in office for 30 years.
See, I didn't realize he was there that long.
Right.
That's a long time.
Right.
Man, we need term limits.
So how long have you been a state representative, Chad?
Just a year now, so I'm still pretty new.
Okay.
Freshman, and, yeah.
So what's your impression of the Idaho legislature so far?
Well, that's a big question.
I'm full of them.
I probably about what I thought it'd be like. And there's also some things that I was surprised that were pleasant. For example, certain leadership members I thought weren't as against certain agendas that I thought they were. Majority Leader Mike Moyle will help me with the school carry bill this coming session, so so I appreciate that. He'll speak to the Chairman Steve Harris of the committee to get that bill going through. So hopefully he'll follow through with that on his word, and so yeah, surprised me there. Some of the games and certain chairman blocking bills, which is I expected was going to happen, which I don't agree with. The committee should decide how a bill should move forward, not a single chairman. So that was expected, and that did happen to me on more than one occasion. But, and then also certain legislators that I really enjoy being around. That are quite liberty minded like me.
Were there more in the House than what you thought there would be that were more liberty oriented?
I did, yeah. In fact, a couple that I wasn't. In fact, Steve, the chairman, Steve Harris, has quite a good voting record, but he blocked my school carrier bill. so his voting record's quite conservative. So I appreciate that. And also Vito Barbereri, was quite conservative, and I didn't realize that. And yeah, there's several of us Liberty legislators that we instantly became friends, and
nice.
Before the session started, Priscilla Giddings, Heather Scott, Brian Zollinger, Barbara Ehart, Tammy Nichols. I can go on with them, but being with them has been quite enjoyable, and creating a friendship and a bond, and we plan and scheme, and so I enjoy that part of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's got to be an adventure like every day and every session, that you go into the legislature.
Yeah, for sure. There's always something new that pops up, and and certain drama that pops up. We have people that show up to the state house every day that are mostly liberally. I'm a liberal minded because they're from Boise area, which is too bad because we have this whole state that's quite conservative, and they don't really they can't come out to Boise and testify and plead to their legislators like the people in Boise can. So we see a lot of that in the state house. A lot of locals in Boise that aren't like-minded like I am.
Yeah, actually, let's talk about that for a second, if you don't mind. Because Independence is here in the Treasure Valley, which is, there's a lot of firearm manufacturers, and there's, supposedly at least a lot of pro 2A folks here, but I think maybe in the city of Boise, there might not be some folks who are as pro Second Amendment as the rest of the state. Can you talk about kind of what you've noticed about that?
Well, I'm sure you heard of the bacon incident.
The bacon restaurant.
Let's. I have heard of it. I learned that was you today. But for if somebody that's listening hasn't heard about that incident, let's talk about it a little bit. Give us the play-by-play.
All right. I was going to bring it up. What happened is, it was my birthday, and it was during session. So some gentlemen offered to take me to lunch, and they were open carrying firearms in the Capitol, which is allowed.
Sure.
And we walked from there to the Capitol to the bacon restaurant. I was carrying, but I was concealed. My jacket was on. So we walk in, and the bacon restaurant has a menu in the back. That you order in the back, and they cook the food in the back. But you order from a menu or a sign up top has the counter. So you look at the counter. Much like a fast food place. The counter and the cash register.
Sure.
So we order it and pay for it. Then we go sit down, and we sat in a little area that's kind of blocked off, had some walls around it, and entranceway. So we weren't really seen by a lot of people, but we were when we walked in. I pulled my jacket off and sat down, and this man comes walking in, just irate and belligerent. So what are you guys doing in my restaurant? Open carrying firearms? You just rude and belligerent.
Yikes.
He looked at one of them and saw his shoulder holster and said, "That's over the top." He saw my firearm on my side and said, "That you appear to be militia." I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
So just for the record, how were you carrying?
I was I'm carrying on my belt on my side.
Okay.
I was
pretty standard carry.
Right. I was dressed up in my suit from the being in session. And,
sure.
And I told the guy, "Hey, if you want to refund us our money, we'll walk out. No feelings hurt. This is your place. This is your right to
That's
allow
fair.
what you want."
Sure.
Yeah. It's private property. We'll walk out.
Sure.
He's like, he kept pouting. No, and you're scaring my customers, and kept saying, "We'll leave. You can refund us our money." But I'm sure they already cooked the food or cooking it, so he didn't want to lose his money. Who knows why?
Yeah.
Sure.
Or he just wanted a reason to complain.
Right.
So how did that end? Yeah.
Well, he ended up walking out and slamming. Well, the way he did it, he's like, "Well, I'll shut this curtain behind you guys." And that little entranceway I mentioned had a curtain, and he slammed that curtain across and hit us in there. So that weekend I was home, and I thought, I'll post on my personal page on Facebook just to tell friends in Boise, don't go here. He's not gun friendly.
Sure.
And then I thought, And for that reason, I didn't want to blow up on my political page, so I posted on my personal page, and thinking it would avoid that big political mess.
But trolls are everywhere,
right? So yeah, it didn't.
They'll find you. Yeah,
it didn't avoid anything.
Oh man!
And it blew up, and so I had the news. It was all over the news, and Boise area especially, and I showed up Monday to session, and the TV news was there, wanting to interview me, and and so yeah, they twisted it to be. I started a boycott against him, and which I didn't.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing anything about Chad Christensen tells nobody to go here and never go there again.
Right. Yeah. The intent was to not, to tell friends that were gun owners not to go here because they're not gun friendly. But yeah, I mean, I think downtown Boise and the whole area there is just it's.
Well, it's turned so purple, almost blue now.
Oh, I think it's quite blue. Yeah.
You think so?
I think it's going away with Portland and Seattle, and that's what I'm worried about with Idaho. Is we're in for some trouble here if we don't get hold of something and stop this liberal agenda from controlling the state.
So why do you think that is, Chad? Do you think it's just that more people are moving in, or that it's just there's more people in general? What do you think is the cause of that change? Because Boise hasn't always been that way.
Right. Yeah, I believe they're implants.
Transplants.
Transplants. Sorry. Not implants. I think a lot of them are, from out of state. There are a lot of good ones that move into Idaho that are conservative, that run away from, California or the East or West Coast that are conservative.
Sure.
Here. So I do appreciate those folks, but the ones that they're definitely an influx of transplants that are liberal minded, and for example, the new president of BSU is from Santa Cruz. She's they hired her.
That's Trump.
Trump, yeah. She's
yeah. There was a kind of a scuttlebutt about that too.
Right. Yeah, we've been butting heads for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be tough being, because you seem like somebody who sticks to their beliefs no matter what. And stays true, no matter what kind of political fallout you may or may not endure because of that. But how do you deal with that backlash as a politician? Having to deal with people spewing every opinion which way at you.
Well, yeah, I used to get a little frustrated at first, and got kind of upset, and kind of these people are hating me. But
sure.
Now I'm pretty relaxed. I don't. I'm getting so used to it. I'm getting so used to it. I think if the these liberals are so mad at me and so angry, and that I'm doing what's right. I feel like I'm on track and I'm doing what I need to be doing. If they're so angry and frustrated at me,
sure, yeah. Because I feel like there's some parallels to be drawn between pro 2A and anti 2A people about I think a lot of anti Second Amendment folks get very virulent and very angry and very verbal about things. And, it's hard not to take the bait as somebody who's pro 2A. And sometimes you just kind of have to let them do their thing, and I think, right. I feel like as a politician, you're kind of a model of that, just taking it and letting it kind of roll off your back. Am I right?
I think so. Yeah. I've gotten to the point where I just kind of, just do just that, roll off my back and move on. Yeah. You have to, or they consume you, and you couldn't get anything done. And
sure.
So.
Well, in you're law enforcement, right? Background.
Right. Yeah.
So you've had to deal with interesting characters
sure.
in a previous employment. So
sure.
That probably helps a little bit.
Yeah, that has helped. The being ex-law enforcement, and also I think being an ex-coach, and also a current high school umpire, which you get a lot of.
That's probably worse than the law enforcement, I would imagine. So let's talk about a couple things here, if you don't mind. Why is the Second Amendment so important to you, Chad?
Well, people think that I'm this crazy gun guy, and I do love guns. Don't get me wrong. And I enjoy my firearms and shooting and hunting and self-defense but to me, the Second Amendment's very important because it protects all our rights. Freedom of
sure,
speech,
yeah, 100%.
So that's the biggest reason why I'm so pro Second Amendment. Such an advocate for it. Is if we lose that right, then we'll lose then we're doomed to lose all other freedoms.
Yeah, I believe there's, unless I'm making stuff up, there's a poster in Independence Indoor Shooting that says you can't have the first without the second, and I firmly believe that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there was a reason why they put that in there as a second God-given right, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's what limits the government from doing stuff. It's not necessarily our right to carry. It's the government can't take that because it's God-given. It's not government given. So it's really a restriction on the federal government and the state government. It's not a gift to us.
Yeah, that's the thing I think that a lot of people miss out is, or that misinterpret rather, is that it's not a right given to us by the government. It's a divinely, bestowed right upon, man to defend himself and his family and his property and everything. And that right, which is a natural given right, is not to be infringed upon.
Yeah, the government didn't give it to us, so they can't take it away.
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, right on track there. That's how I believe. Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, let's talk about your background a little bit, because you haven't, like you said, you've only been in the legislature for about a year, and I'm sure that's been quite an experience, like you've talked about so far, dealing with all kinds of characters from all over the state. But I think your background kind of uniquely qualifies you, especially as a Second Amendment advocate. So tell us kind of a bit about where Chad Christensen comes from.
Well, born and raised here in Idaho Falls. Served the LDS mission in San Diego. I was in the Army Reserves for 13 years. I served in the military police corps, and then during that time I worked in Jefferson County as a probation officer, then state probation and parole, and then state welfare fraud investigations.
Wow.
So yeah, I think you're right. I think just having that background in the military and law enforcement, I can see all the evil out there. That's
all sorts of different colors of reality.
Right. But I think just having the experience with firearms and in fact, when I was serving in the Army, and they gave us a litmus test. I don't know if you've heard of they asked us if we would go door to door and take firearms away from citizens in that test, and I was pretty upset about that.
Wow.
When I read that.
Really?
Yeah. They asked that question in that test, and I had this private that I was in charge of, and he got all excited. Oh, we can go door to door and confiscate firearms.
Oh no!
And I lived into him and made the kid cry, actually. So I hope I taught him a little bit. He wasn't too scared or mad at me, but I think most of our military, leans our way, and I'm hoping that when things hit the fan, and that we can count on them.
Oh, I hope so. It makes me nervous half the time.
Right, me too.
Actually, speaking of that, Steve's the resident pessimist here. Is that we're gonna, everything's going to be confiscated, and that we're going to be under the thumb of a dictator here, or whatever. What do you think?
Didn't say that.
Well, you've inferred it. Chad, what do you think? I mean, being kind of boots on the ground in the legislature, especially here in Idaho, which is a great, pro Second Amendment amendment state. What do you think the future of the Second Amendment looks like, 5, maybe 10, 15, 20 years down the road?
Well, I think the biggest threats are from the federal government. I think Idaho has to stay strong and stand up to that threat. If we don't, we're in big trouble. I don't think we're going to have too many issues from within, unless the Boise issue and overtakes the state, and it goes blue. But I think the biggest threat is the federal government.
Really,
I do, and we have a current law on the books that that makes it for any officer that's a sheriff deputy or a local police officer to enforce federal gun control laws. He's guilty of a misdemeanor. So that's on the books, but it's not enough teeth. I don't think. I think we need to have more teeth, to nullify these gun control laws altogether.
Sure, yeah.
So to be fair, he makes it sound like I think all guns need to be confiscated. What I said, now it was about a year ago in a podcast, that this at the current state, the Second Amendment is not going to be the same for our kids as the way it was for when I was a kid. that there's going to be restrictions, and I can still see it happening.
Well, it already is.
It's one president away from being completely gone.
Well, there already is restrictions. That happened in the 20s, 30s with
in the 80s.
80s, yeah. So.
Yeah.
See, so I'm not wrong. Jeez.
Well, but I
hope I'm wrong. I mean, a lot of things could change. And unfortunately, in my opinion, the current administration hasn't been real helpful when it comes to firearms.
Unfortunately, I don't think so either.
Well, and what's most fascinating to me is not, it might not be left versus right or liberal versus conservative or whatever, but it seems to be city versus rural. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's probably more the case.
Eastern Idaho is more of a rural area than than Boise and the Treasure Valley and everything. And there's not a better or worse or a more or less or anything like that. I've been to Eastern Idaho. It's a beautiful place. And the Treasure Valley's a good place too. But as coming from Eastern Idaho, Chad, what do you see as the differences in thought between fire and let me back up a little bit. What do you see as the differences in, thoughts on firearms between, Eastern Idaho, the little more rural kind of area, and the Western Idaho, a little more urban kind of lifestyle?
Well, we touched on it. I think I think small town Idaho or are more inclined to be religious, believe in God, than for example big urban areas are less inclined to believe in religion, God, and more secular and
you think there's? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And believe that rights are issued from government or to privilege to exercise the right to own a firearm. But I think the people in rural Idaho, small town Idaho, believe that like we just talked about, it's God-given right, and I'll be damned if I give my gun over to some government official. So I think that's quite a difference there from urban areas and these small town Idaho for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, you've spent a fair amount of time here in the Valley, and you obviously grew up in Eastern Idaho. What do you think is the big difference?
Well, I think it really is just that you get so accustomed to having everything on demand. Like you can go anywhere in Boise and get whatever you want any time of day. Where here growing up, we had to work for it. We had to wait to go to town. So I think as a common sense or being grounded, I don't know what you want to call it, but we're just a little bit more slower paced and probably a little bit more methodical in our thinking. And maybe that's not even a fair statement either, but I don't know. I think we kind of think things through a little bit more. Working with your hands is totally different than working with your brain too. Being in touch with the ground and having to work for your food also changes a lot of mindset.
Yeah, it's a whole different world. And I feel like, honestly, that both, there's got to be a mutual respect, and I think, I don't know. It's hard to say. I think that there's a respect a little bit on both sides, but it's such a different lifestyle. I mean, when you grow up in a rural area, that guns are just a part of life. And when you grow up in an urban area, guns are only associated with crime. And that's the unfortunate thing. You know what I mean? As somebody who grew up in a very urban area and outside a very urban area, one of the biggest cities in the country, the only time you hear about firearms are either in movies or in a crime. And, as we've talked about it before, is that, defensive gun uses happen, hundreds of times a day.
Thousands of times a day. And I think too, you get to a rural area, there's a lot of hunting going on, a lot more recreational shooting. And you're right, in the urban areas, all you hear about on the nightly news is, so many people gunned down. Like, in Chicago, you're familiar with hearing the news every night in Chicago where, there's tons of gang violence and guns are just evil. And that's all you see. You never see any kind of positive light to them.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate because there's, we've talked about it ad nauseum on the podcast about, not only is there hunting and self-defense, but there's the shooting sports as well, the competition aspect to it that I think a lot of people don't understand and don't realize that's a real thing.
Well, you think about the thousands of defensive gun uses in a day. Think about the hundreds of millions of rounds that are shot in a week, whether it be at a range or a match or something, that no incident, zero. It's pretty amazing when you think about it that way too, to me at least anyways.
Yeah, isn't that insane? But people don't talk about that.
Knowledge and some safety, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Unless you're a paper target, I guess it's probably a make.
So Chad, to switch gears a little bit, you've been to Independence Indoor Shooting, right?
Have you been to our shop over there?
I haven't yet. No.
Oh, you have. Oh, you got to come through, man. It's great.
Yeah, definitely. In Meridian.
Yeah.
Oh, I've been there. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's huge, right? It's crazy.
It's a good facility. Yeah.
Well, because I was going to ask, what kind of shooting do you enjoy? Are you a hunter? Are you more self-defense oriented? What kind of firearm? Are you into?
How do you lean? I guess.
How do you lean?
I'm not trying to have I lean a certain way. I enjoy it all. I mean, I love to shoot my ARs. I love to, my 6.5 Creedmoor AR platform and the hunting rifles. I mean, I love to hunt. I love to hunt birds. I really enjoy pheasant hunting in South Dakota with my family and
lots of birds over there.
Oh man, it's awesome out there. So I mean, yeah, it's and my father target practices a lot, and he goes to matches in Rexburg cowboy shooting and out to west of Idaho Falls and
Seeps
and takes me Seeps and takes me sometimes, and I go I enjoy it all. There's not a certain
Sure, and that's the thing is what we talked about before on the podcast, and I think what a lot of people don't understand is that my previous point is that the shooting sports and firearms encompasses such a huge breadth and scope of different enthusiasts, whether that's hunting or self-defense or tactical or anything. And there's so many different avenues you can go down in the shooting sports. And
each branch of the shooting sports really is its own entity. I mean, I've met competitive shooters where they're just competitive shooters. They don't like the idea of hunting or anything like that. They're completely just focused on that one skill set. So I don't know. That's why I think it's so fascinating about the firearms industry or the shooting sports in itself is, I mean, you can be dedicated just to one thing and it'll take you a long time to even master that one element, I think.
Oh, for sure. So let's switch gears a little bit more. Let's talk about, because one of the things we talked about on this podcast is about how, the average person can get involved and to help secure their Second Amendment rights. We've talked about, becoming a member of the Gun Owners of America, talking about the Second Amendment Alliance and Greg Pruitt and all the great work he's doing. But what can they do? Talk about contacting their representatives, because I think that's the biggest hurdle that a lot of people have. They don't want to email or write or talk to their representatives because they don't think it's going to do any good. But Chad, maybe you can shed some light on what we can do as average citizens to help reach out and make our opinions heard.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example. Last session I had the school carry bill, which allows enhanced permit holders to carry in schools K through 12. And I actually beg people to, hey, write Chairman Steve Harris your opinion about this bill and to let it be heard and have the public hearing on it. And I think if he, if he would have been overwhelmed by emails and phone calls and I believe he would have had the hearing. So I do believe that if they contact legislators and say, hey, we're in favor of this bill, school carry bill or whatever bill it may be, I think that has a great impact. If they receive 200 emails from their constituents saying they support this bill, mm-hmm. they'll think about it. And well, I probably do it because I've actually heard from several congressmen. I received 1,000 emails from my constituents, so I couldn't say no to that vote. So it does work.
And that's the thing; it only takes a few minutes,
right?
And what makes me kind of think about this is a couple weeks ago or last week, Idaho Second Amendment Alliance was in Idaho Falls, mm-hmm. and I met with you there too, and I was actually really disappointed. I didn't feel like it was that big of a group,
right, to
come and support the cause, I guess you could say. And I posted it on Facebook, and so many people said, "Well, I didn't even know about it." Do you follow the Second Amendment Alliance? I mean, it's not that hard to find information about it,
right?
And it, to me, it's apathy. I think that's what a lot of it boils down to is a lot of people, they might be really concerned about the Second Amendment, but they don't do anything about it. And it really frustrates me. And I've been in that same place too. Like, I don't have time to make a phone call or write an email. And I've had to kind of wend my ways and be a little bit more proactive. And I don't know if anybody else is still concerned about it. I think, at least in my point of view, a lot of Idahoans, they feel that way. Oh, somebody else will take care of it. It's never going to happen here.
Right. They're complacent and apathetic. I think, this is Idaho. It won't happen here. Attitude. And, well, I guess, again, things are in the works, and there are red flag laws. In fact, there's a Democrat legislator that has a red flag law that's going to bring it forward. Or not a law, but a bill.
A bill.
That she's going to bring forward next session. So, I mean, it's in the works, and we need to be vigilant and keep fighting it all the time, or we're going to lose this state.
And we are in a good spot right now, but like you're saying, it's important to get ahead of that curve before.
Absolutely.
I mean, look at the guys in Washington now that they're really frustrated about Washington State, where the guys on the eastern side of the state, they have no voice,
right?
Because they never stood up for themselves before,
right?
Yeah, I think there's really, like you said, Steve, there's a lot of complacency, and people just don't think about it, or they don't care, and they think that their rights are going to be there no matter what. And unfortunately, that's not the case.
I think too that social media has been really good at labeling. Labeling conservatives as, oh, you're just racist, or you're a bigot, or whatever, and we don't want to be felt that way, or we don't want to be called that way, and so I think we avoid the storm, I guess, a little bit.
It was label lynching, and they use that tactic to come at conservatives, and they wanted to attach labels to to me, we the extremist or radical, or which then they can make it stick.
Yeah.
That's part of their agenda.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, so as an average citizen, what can we do to kind of make our argument about the Second Amendment, and that we stand for our rights? And do you have any advice on kind of that regard of it?
As an average citizen, what they can do to stand for their rights, you're saying? Yeah.
It's a tough question, I know, because we face a lot of opposition, I feel like, and a lot of loud opposition. But what do you think, as a legislator, what can we do to make sure that we stand up for our rights?
I think the biggest thing is to make some noise and be heard. I think if attend a gun rally, and there's been gun rallies around the state, and go to those rallies and be loud, and let the media know that, hey, we're serious. And it'll get around to legislators and the governor and congressmen, and I think that's the biggest key, is being loud about our right. And I think email we mentioned that.
How many actually? Maybe you can't answer this. How many legislators do you feel like actually respond to their constituents?
Wow,
that's a tough question.
That's tough. Yeah, I mean, I think some are really good about it. I try to be really good about it. If I see a form email that's sent by a certain organization that's a form email, that's hard to respond to, and you get so many of them. But the ones that actually email me, and I'm always respond to them. So I think it's probably half and half. I would imagine that which ones are,
Yeah, one thing the reason why I asked that is I've emailed and called some folks that have been in office for quite a while about this very subject, and I just get form emails back, or form letters back that their signatures just stamped on there. So sometimes I wonder, do you even are they really even listening?
Well, that's the problem. I think the longer you've been in office, the less you care about the people that you're supposed should be serving. My last opponent, I believe that was the case with him. He was out of touch with his constituents because he didn't really care about what they thought and what their issues were. And he became entitled to his position, and it happens. You're in for 10 years or more, that's going to happen.
I can't even imagine wanting to be in office that long, honestly.
Oh, right. And I've only been a year.
30 years, man. That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in a year. I'm like, I don't know if I can do this for even 10 years.
Well, that's the right attitude to have, though. I mean, the point of an elected office isn't to be there forever.
Right.
It's just to make your voice heard of the people that you represent, and that's it.
Oh, sure. Well, our founders set up to, if you're a blacksmith or a farmer, then you go serve for a few years and then go back to your your profession. You know, that's how they want it to be.
Yeah.
You know, not to be a career politician. You know, that was never the never the agenda. It was you leave your profession for a little while, then return to it.
So, are there any upcoming bills on the horizon that you see? Like you mentioned, that red flag law that's going to be brought up to.
Yeah, I don't know the exact contents of the bill, but I know it's going to be along those lines that that Representative Winthrow is going to bring forward, and she had one last session too. It was kind of red flag type of law too, but we shot it down. The House did.
Yeah. And that kind of seems like the avenue that they're going is for safety, right? Which they always use that word safety for our protection. They got to disarm us, which sounds familiar from other civilizations in the past.
Right. Well, and also Marcy's Law is going to. I've seen advertisements for Marcy's Law again, which we defeated it.
Thank goodness.
Twice now, but it's coming back again, I believe, because they're showing advertisements for it again. So Marcy's Law, there's I believe is a red flag law too, because the judge can a person charged with the crime, and the judge can take his firearms away until before he's actually convicted, he or she. So it blows my mind, and you saw California, just Gavin Newsom, he decided to. The most strictest firearm laws that he wrote into bill.
He just passed 15 new bills into law, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, and his version of the red, or California's version of the red flag law.
There we go.
Is his version of the red flag laws are that teachers or anybody can say, hey, they can talk to a student and say, hey, you go shooting with your parents, does your mom and dad have a gun? Right. And that can be deemed a threat, and you can, lose your rights.
Happened in Colorado recently. You hear about that?
Maybe, I can't remember.
Yeah, there was a mother and son, which they shoot a lot, and he was shooting his .22 with his mother in the mountains or something, just target shooting, and it's put on Facebook, and then
he got kicked out of school or something, right?
Uh-huh.
Was that the finger gun thing?
No,
that's another.
No. He was in the mountains with his mother target shooting.
And he just posted a picture on
wow,
or Facebook or something, and he went to school. The school kicked him out of the school, and then they called the cops, the police, and the police came and got involved and investigated it, and they said, "Well, there's nothing unlawful here," and so they had to fight the school. It's just ridiculous.
That just boils my blood.
I know, it's insane because like we talked about before, it's like it's the sport of shooting, and you can enjoy that with the family. I think Steve and I have talked about on the podcast before about, seeing people improve their shooting skills and really treat it as a sport or as a skill that you can improve and work on, and the rewarding, skills that can come from that.
Well, and we've even seen it with people that have never shot before that we've introduced to shooting on the podcast.
Very true. Very true.
180 degrees. And I don't know, it's just so crazy that we're in a spot now with the Constitution, because I really believe once the Second Amendment is altered or defeated in a way that
it's all downhill from there.
Freedom of speech will be next. We'll have to regulate. Well, they're already trying that. Really regulate how we speak. I may not agree with Chappelle's comedy, but oh my gosh, he can't say that. When he has every right to say whatever he wants. We choose to be offended. We may not like it, but we also don't have to participate if we don't want to. And that's the thing. It just blows my mind.
There's already free speech zones in Washington D.C. and and you have a rally, then all of a sudden officers will show up and create a free speech zone that's taped off and marked, so you have to go in that area to exercise your free speech, which is absurd.
I pay my taxes. The whole country is a free speech zone.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. Seriously.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
So
man.
you mentioned your school carry bill,
right?
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, let's delve into that some more. What exactly is the bill?
Okay, the bill. So if you have an enhanced concealed weapons permit, and if you're a parent or a teacher or any school staff member, or even a janitor, if you have that permit, you can carry. And in school in Idaho, in K through 12. So it's pretty straightforward, and the idea behind it for me is to stop, school shooting. Mm-hmm. If a would-be bad guy sees, gun-free zones, they're a target, in my opinion. And schools advertise it. I've seen them around the state in Boise or
gun-free zones,
gun-free zone school. well, okay, we're advertising that we're not armed, not going to fight back. So, of course, the bad guy's going to pick that target and go after it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, though. In Idaho, state law allows somebody to carry already, but school districts have the right to choose not to. Right. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the school board can say yes or no to a teacher or anybody that's on the school premises.
So it just boils down to the board itself.
Right.
And your bill would circumvent that.
Right.
Well, good. Yeah, because...
And again, I'm sorry, I probably missed it, but what is the status of that bill right now?
Oh, right now, the NRA supports it. The regional NRA director, representative support. Well, and they've endorsed it. The FOP's endorsed it. So those two agencies have endorsed the bill. But last session, the organizations that were opposed to it were the Chiefs Association and the Sheriff's Association.
Really?
Which have been a commonplace in gun bills in Idaho. The Sheriff's Association and Chiefs Association have been always opposed to gun bills. Constitutional carry.
That's interesting.
Stand your ground. Well, I think part of the problem is the leadership. For example, in the Sheriff's Association, Vaughn Killeen is not very conservative. And same, I believe the Chiefs Association is quite similar. And I was actually surprised. I actually contacted my whole district, the sheriffs and chiefs, and about my bill, and I didn't get a lot of support.
Really?
No.
Wow, that surprises.
Yeah, I've had sheriffs say, "No, I don't believe in more guns in schools." That was the Caribou County sheriff, Bonneville County sheriff. No, he
even Paul didn't like it.
Paul didn't like it,
wow.
which I'm his ex-opponent. I don't know if that's personal between me and him, but he didn't like it. And there's the chief in Preston, Idaho didn't like it. Which is all about and they tell me their reasoning is, or their justifications is that we have a plan in place to protect our schools. And we've established a relationship with our schools, and but you can't be there in 2 seconds to defend these teachers and students.
Yeah, there's a difference, and I think we've said it before. There's a difference between a first responder and an immediate responder,
right? Which is ridiculous. Cops show up and it's over with, in most cases.
Yeah.
And so the idea is to get rounds on the bad guy instantly to stop these, shut these things down. And an officer showing up 10 minutes later, and it's all over with.
Or waiting outside, like we saw in
Florida, right? With that coward at Broward County, right?
Man.
So yeah, but like I said, the FOP supports it. So there are officers out there that do support it. I've heard certain deputies in Bonneville County support it. So they are out there, and so Brad Lannis is the Idaho FOP president, and he actually convinced the lobbyist Paul Jagosh to support the bill, and so that support is there, which is crazy. The FOP supports it, but the sheriffs don't.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting.
I would almost think it would be opposite,
right?
Personally.
Exactly.
Well, and I've read and I've experienced, at least back in Illinois, where I'm from originally, is that usually what the legislature and the executive branch of this the state kind of system opposes, the law enforcement does support. It's kind of interesting how that goes. So it's kind of interesting to hear the opposite in Idaho.
Right. Yeah. Right. And something that some facts about certain states that like Utah have had this has had this law in effect for 20 years or so, and no issues. No school shootings have happened in Utah, of course. There was one incident with its teacher that was in the bathroom and her firearm dropped on the ground and went off. So there has been an incident.
But that's training,
right?
That's a training issue.
California had this law in effect for a long time, which is crazy. And people don't know about it. It was 30, 40 years this law was in effect. These and never an incident with a concealed permit holder. Mm. There was one incident with an off-duty officer that was teaching a class, and his firearm went off in the classroom. But it was an off-duty officer.
Yeah, to me, again, that's a training issue. It's
right.
not a
right.
The bill seems sound.
And also another fact is that concealed permit holders are more law-abiding than police officers are.
Yeah, we've talked about that before, I think, haven't we, Steve?
My experience, watching over ranges is that civilians that usually pay to train and and spend a lot more time behind a gun at the range tend to be safer than those that qualify twice a year.
Sure.
And I've seen a lot of, Mark knows, I watched over a 3-letter agency, a pretty formal group of a 3-letter agency, the door kicker side doing their job, training, and it was one of the scariest things I've ever seen. Wow. Not because of shock and awe, just because complete lack of respect for firearms and rules. Like, it was...
Wow.
I thought for sure I'd be putting tourniquets on that night.
Well, we've talked about it before, that there's a complacency to it. You know what I mean? Where people just, you carry a gun all the time, every day, no matter what. And after a while, it just doesn't matter. You don't think about it anymore, and it's complacency.
Well, then you turn into that DEA agent that says, I'm the only one qualified to handle this firearm.
Bam! Yeah, man. So...
Yeah. Well, and it's happened here in Jefferson County. You know, I knew an officer when I worked up here that shot himself in the foot. So
wow.
I know a Bonneville guy that did the same thing.
Yeah.
Even in Idaho, it can happen here.
It happens. Like you're saying, it just gets to be an apathy thing. You get comfortable around something. You know, I work a lot with power tools, and the 2 times I've cut myself on a table saw are the 2 times that I got comfortable around the table saw.
Yeah, and you weren't thinking about it.
That's just it. They're tools. You know, firearms are tools, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. They're not this mass destruction weapon.
No.
They're a tool to protect or to hunt, or just like a saw is with woodworking.
Right.
In my opinion. You know.
I agree.
Yeah.
It all comes down to training and being responsible over it. That's it. And you can't ever get too much training, anyways.
No, you can't. We've talked about that too. Is the minute you stop learning is the minute you become dangerous.
Yep.
So, well, Chad, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you want to talk about that maybe we didn't touch on yet?
I'm not sure right now. I'll probably leave and think of some more things. But.
Yeah. So I have, what I didn't tell Chad is I have five questions I normally ask.
Oh, the 5 questions.
The core questions.
Okay.
And normally, like I've asked these to trainers and stuff, and just to try and get a different aspect of who they are. And it's actually taken us down some pretty interesting avenues about getting to know who people are. And is it okay if I ask you these questions? Sure. All right, let me find them here. Okay, so like I said, it's just 5, and feel free to answer them or not answer them. It's up to you.
Well, they are thought provoking. I'll say that
they are. It took me all of 5 minutes to come up with them. So. All right. So, what experience in your life has been the most influential, and why?
What experience is most influential? I think it goes down to my faith. I think to me my faith is a huge part of my life. In fact, when I was deciding to run for office or not, I had to sit down and I had to pray about it and ask God, should I run for office? Because I felt this is not just a position, but it's a calling. Because I feel that protecting the rights of the citizens of Idaho is a calling, because they're rights God's given us. So I feel that just that relationship with God is a huge influence in my life, and that's always going to guide me in my duties as a legislator. And I get grief for it all the time. I'll post it on Facebook how I use God in my life and how I use Him in my position or calling, which I just called it. And I'm sorry, I'll always use it and always use that guiding light. So, hey,
George Washington was a praying man too. So
right.
I think he was.
Most of them were. Most of our founders were. And people try to fight, argue against that, but they were.
Right. Awesome. Okay, so
nice.
you just won the lottery. It was a huge amount of money. What's the first thing you're going to do, and why?
Wow. Well, our church that you now belong to, I probably wouldn't take any money from that, which I want to give a lot of money to our church, but pay off my bills, which I don't care about living extravagantly, and I just like having my home and having some guns and a nice truck and maybe a couple toys, and that's about it. I'm not I don't need a lot of things. I'm a simple man. I like to hunt and I like to fish and dirt bike and snowmobile, and ride my horse, so I don't need much more than that.
Simple living.
Right, simple living, and so I think I would, do good with it. I would support, liberty causes as much as I could. People like, or places like, Madison Liberty Institute, I would support them with more money. And
Ron's doing a lot of work up there.
Ron Nate's awesome. He's, another man that's God's behind him. I feel that quite strongly that God's behind that man and what he does.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk with him. He's a really cool guy.
He is. So those kind of causes I would definitely support more and more as much as I could with that money.
Right on.
Very cool.
Right, what's your biggest fear?
Biggest fear is leaving a country or a state that my kids aren't free in. That's why I'm so passionate about these rights. I think is not just my kids but our kids. It's all of our children and our posterity. That's my biggest fear, is leaving them in a place that's tyrannical and socialism and that scares me. And so that's why I'm so passionate about this. And I believe that my father generation or my grandfather generation have failed in certain areas. They were good people, but they also failed to protect us of certain things. And so I want to fight now and stop these future issues that will cause a loss of freedom.
Appreciate that one, actually.
Yeah.
All right. What would you say is your biggest achievement?
Having my kids, I think that's probably the most important thing, and teaching them and my son. I'll give an example. Last Friday night, my son called me at 12:30 a.m. So he's almost 20 now, and he's and it worried me. I'm like, what in the world? And I couldn't answer right away, so I called him right back, and he said, "Dad, thanks for teaching me all these things, and about truth and about fighting for liberty and about God, and how God's involved with all this, and how much He cares about these things." And he had a quite experience that night with his friend, and they were talking and reading scriptures, and he called. And so I think that's stuff like that really gets to me, and I really feel full that I taught my children well. And so my biggest achievement is teaching my children the right thing. And
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Very important.
I appreciate that answer too. That is awesome.
You got one left, right, Steve?
One left, and this is actually my favorite question. And also, when I ask this, I think about how I would answer, and I kind of know how I would answer. But I like hearing other people answer this one. It says, who would you consider your hero and why?
The first man that comes to mind is Edward Taft Benson. Just his stand against, for the Constitution and God-given rights and freedom, and he was just vigilant his whole life in preaching the Constitution and liberty and freedom, and he's inspired me time and time again. I visit Preston, Idaho quite often because it's part of my district, so I go down there quite a bit, and I'll see his gravesite, and I'll go up there and just sit next to it and just soak in what he's given me and his so I think he's definitely top of the list there as far as in fact I ran for sheriff in 2012 and had a guy say, hey, go down to Smith and Edwards in Ogden and get some constitutions from them. They'll give them to you for free. So I drove down there and I talked to Mr. Smith, and he said, yeah, I'll give you some constitutions, and he told me a story about Edward Taft Benson calling him to preach the Constitution the rest of his life, and it was amazing, just that whole conversation. And it wasn't official church calling by the LDS Church, but Benson said, go out and teach the Constitution the rest of your life.
That's awesome.
He said, since that day he had, and he fulfilled that promise to Edward Taft Benson, and just the chills I got from that conversation and the inspiration, just help motivate me even more. And
that's cool.
That's never great. Yeah.
And if you haven't been to Smith and Edwards, that store itself is awesome.
Exactly. Pretty cool store. Yeah.
Put it on your list, man. Yeah, for sure.
It is a destination.
Yeah, it is. Definitely a real Walmart, a true Walmart store, not a.
There's only one.
That has everything there, not just it's whatever you want. And it's
There
a
you
mom
go.
pop store, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Chad, thank you so much for taking some time with us. We really appreciate it. And if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how can they reach you?
Probably email is the best way. It's c.christensen@house.idaho.gov.
And you got a Facebook presence? Right?
Facebook presence that's I think pretty. Yeah.
You can find all the haters. I've noticed last time I was on there, because I follow you and I'll often respond to some of the stuff you post. And
yeah, you do.
I noticed there's a couple people that are definitely not in your district. Or in the state.
Quite a few.
Maybe not even.
I get all over the world. San Francisco and
Yeah, you got a lot of folks coming after you.
England and wherever, yeah, for sure. New York State, yeah. They
must be doing something right.
Yeah, they find you.
That's for sure.
Well, cool.
So, all right. Well, hey, thank you again, Chad. We really appreciate it. And, if you want to get a hold of Chad, let us know. We can point you in the right direction too. podcast@iishooting.com or hit us up on Facebook and Instagram @range-minded-podcast. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
Right on. See you guys.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Range Minded. Find us online at Range Minded Podcast on Facebook or send us an email at podcast@iishooting.com. We're always happy to get feedback, episode suggestions, whatever you want to send us, really. And be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and pretty much wherever else you get your podcasts from. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.